With just 23 days until Election Day, large portions of the Southeast are in recovery mode. And presidential candidates are campaigning from coast to coast to get out the vote. Our new CBS News poll shows the race for the White House remains a toss-up, with Vice President Harris up just 3 points over former President Donald Trump nationwide, 51% to 48%. That's 1 point tighter from last month. Among voters in the 7 battleground states that will decide this election, it's just a 1 point difference, 50 to 49. Meanwhile, repair and cleanup efforts are underway in both Florida and North Carolina, where more than 260 deaths have been blamed on 2 major hurricanes. President Biden is in Florida this morning surveying the damage. Vice President Harris will hold a rally later in North Carolina. And we begin this morning with Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Welcome back to Face the Nation.
Good morning, Margaret. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Secretary, you oversee FEMA. There is still 7 weeks left in hurricane season. FEMA's director says they've already used nearly half of the $20 billion in disaster relief Congress allocated to them. But the Speaker of the House says FEMA has plenty of resources, they've been slow to respond, and that FEMA hasn't actually distributed the money. Can you clear that up?
Margaret, FEMA has the money to address the immediate needs of individuals impacted by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. But we need Congress to act swiftly to fund FEMA and specifically its Disaster Relief Fund, because hurricane season is not over, and also seasons are less and less important now given the effects of climate change and the increasing gravity and frequency of extreme weather events. And I should say, FEMA has not been slow at all. It already has distributed more than $470 million in relief to individuals impacted by Hurricane Helene. I take great pride, and this nation should take great pride, in the extraordinary work of our FEMA personnel and all first responders.
So this is obligated versus distributed. That's where you two are sort of disagreeing with each other, but it seems. But before Hurricane Milton hit, you said October 2nd, we do not have the funds. FEMA doesn't have the funds to make it through the season and what is imminent. So if another hurricane hits before the election, are there funds to deal with that kind of emergency situation?
We will address the immediate impacts, but remember, immediate impacts speak of immediate needs, meals, potable water, and the like. But also we have to ensure that individuals can recover from these extreme disasters, such as rebuilding their homes, repairing damage, and the like. And so we need Congress to act swiftly to fund what should be a nonpartisan, apolitical phenomenon, and that is providing relief to all individuals with respect to the impacts of these extreme weather events.
So immediate versus rebuilding. So you could wait until after the election. Do you know how much you'll need?
We don't know.
Okay.
We are still, for example, assessing the damage from Hurricane Milton, which is of historic strength, and it also led to approximately 27 different tornadoes. So we don't know the impact. We don't know what's coming tomorrow, whether it's another hurricane, a tornado, a fire, an earthquake. We have to be ready, and it is not good government to be dependent on a day-to-day existence as opposed to appropriate planning.
We've seen some dangerous misinformation being amplified online. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis hit back hard at some of these claims that if you got help from the federal government, somehow they'd seize your assets in his state. FEMA has been trying to counteract some of these lies as well. Are you concerned when you see this and how widespread it is, that it's a preview of what's to come with the upcoming U.S. election as well, attempts to manipulate people?
Incredibly concerned, and the misinformation, I should say it's disinformation, false information deliberately spread to impact people's behavior and perceptions, it is extremely pernicious. We have individuals in need of assistance who are entitled to assistance who aren't seeking it because of the false information.
Who's driving it?
Well, I'll tell you what we need. We need individuals, elected officials, people who have the platform to really debunk this false information, and we're not seeing enough of that. And I find that to be incredibly irresponsible, and irresponsible to the people who are survivors of these extreme weather events.
You have a big portfolio at Homeland Security, and of course, the U.S. border is part of that. Border crossings are now at a low for the Biden presidency. But our CBS polling shows 65% of Trump voters believe the Biden administration is trying to intentionally increase the number of migrants at the border. And among the people who do believe that, 3/4 of them say it's because the administration wants them to vote. And the Speaker of the House just told us that he thinks non-citizens are going to vote, even though this is already illegal under established law. What mechanisms can you tell the public about that exist to prevent this from happening?
So what a powerful example of disinformation. There is no facts underlying these assertions. They are extremely damaging. It causes people to lose confidence in the integrity of the election system. And we need people in positions of authority to actually communicate accurate information to the voting public. The numbers that we are experiencing now at the border are actually lower than they were at this time of year in 2019. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just over the last 3 years, but well before them in the pre-COVID times. And the notion that we in law enforcement have sought to intentionally allow individuals to cross the border illegally for the purpose of voting is preposterous. And everyone should condemn that rhetoric, everyone, regardless of party affiliation.
So on the issue of the actions you've taken to bring these border crossings down, this was President Biden's presidential power. He's essentially disqualifying most of those who are entering illegally from being able to get asylum. This was meant to be a temporary policy change. So you took this without having to go to Congress and change the law, in short.
We took it after Congress failed to take the enduring step of legislation, which was bipartisan in nature.
But just in doing that, by doing this through presidential power, aren't you essentially doing what Republicans said was possible throughout, which was with the stroke of a pen, President Biden could stop all of this?
No, and remember where we were. We were enforcing Title 42 of the Public Health Authority until May of last year. We then sought from Congress additional funding, additional Border Patrol agents, additional Homeland Security investigations personnel. They did not fund the Department of Homeland Security to enhance our border security. We sought that funding again rejected. A bipartisan group of senators actually presented the most dramatic change in legislation in over 20 years. Congress was poised to pass it, and then politics got in the way. Some people would prefer the problem to persist than deliver a solution for the American people. The president acted. And remember, we had to build the capacity to implement so successfully the president's proclamation, and that is indeed what we have been doing month after month.
So, but on this issue of who is in the country, I know practically speaking, it is very difficult to deport, for example, to the country of Venezuela. Donald Trump on the campaign trail talks a lot about a prison gang from that country. And he argues there's already laws on the books that would allow for the Biden administration to dismantle criminal networks. He says he'd do it. Are there those laws? Are you doing everything you can to combat this transnational criminal organization?
Yes, we are. And I think you're speaking of Tren de Aragua, TDA. Margaret, I was a prosecutor for 12 years. We had criminal gangs to battle back then. We are indeed doing everything we can to dismantle criminal gangs and transnational criminal organizations. And quite frankly, we've devoted an unprecedented level of resources and personnel and focus to this effort. This is not a new phenomenon, but we are bringing new tools, new capabilities, and new resources to the fight.
Can you quickly explain what the status is with this arrest this past week, or this prosecution we learned of this past week, of this Afghan national who was apparently planning an election day terrorist attack on behalf of ISIS? He was in this country. He had immigration status. Was he radicalized before he came to the United States?
So, Margaret, it is an ongoing prosecution, so I won't speak of the facts, but the viewing public is getting an idea of the breadth and diversity of the missions that we in the Department of Homeland Security tackle.
But it gets to the issue of vetting versus whether he was radicalized here.
Remember, the individual came in through parole, an Afghan national, and when we vet, and we do so intensively, when we vet an individual, it's a point-in-time screening and vetting process. If we obtain information subsequently that suggests the individual could be of danger, we take appropriate law enforcement action. That is exactly what we did in this case.
Understood. Secretary Mayorkas, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Margaret.